Chapter 4. A week later, Mercy shook as she opened the front door to find Amos Shelley on her doorstep, arms full of cloth. To her right, standing at the corner of her house, she felt rather than saw Garrett. He did nothing but watch. "Miss Hansford, Mr. Gardner sent me with ye cloth as ye have yet to claim it at the store." Her hands were steady when she reached to unburden Amos. "Thank ye, Amos. Wait, and I will get ye coin." Garrett lounged against the side of the house, speaking to Amos by the time she returned with the boy's money. "And this one is for ye, Amos. See that you spend it with care." The boy's face lit with pleasure. "Yes, ma'am." He slid the coin into a hidden pocket in his breeches. The rest remained in his right hand for Mr. Gardner. Garrett brought a hand to his forelock and dipped back behind the house. Mercy's heart warmed and said a short prayer of thanks to God for sending him. Surely this fear would abate soon. The first few days she dreaded a visit from Mary or some other neighbor to tell her the whole village knew her shame. When that didn't happen, she assumed her trembling would disappear. A week later, she still startled at the rap at her door. She opened to see Garrett's warm smile. He made no move to enter her home, for which she was thankful. Still skittish about going out alone, she knew he would protect her. Of that she was certain. Even in broad daylight she trembled within at the thought of venturing beyond her fence. She thanked God the tenderness was gone. The bruises no longer pinched with every movement like a sore thumb. "Looks like a storm's coming up." Mercy noted the clouds running across the sky. No wonder Lucy balked when Mercy'd fed her earlier. She'd been too caught up in her own trepidation to pay attention. Wind ruffled Garrett's tricorn right off his head. He caught it just before it skittered to the ground. She handed him her father's coat. "Put this on." Already transformed by the clothes she'd given him, he'd pass, she thought. His hair looked like he'd taken a chopping knife to it without a looking glass, but his hat took care of most of that. Nothing could change the odd way he spoke, and while that endeared him to her, she wasn't so sure of her neighbors. "We shall have to hurry. Dr. Morris needs his new shirts." She retrieved her carefully wrapped bundle. "Let me take that." Garrett took hold of the parcel. Their hands touched in the transfer, sending a tingle up Mercy's arm that touched her heart. She looked to the ground to hide the pink she was sure infused her cheeks. They set out side by side down the dirt road toward Dr. Morris's house. Garrett's head swung like it was swivel-mounted. "What do you see?" "It's a mixture of what I see and what I don't see." Mercy waited for him to continue. They'd passed 3 more houses and reached Main Street before he spoke again. "In my time, these houses are gone. That one's still there." He pointed to a white clapboard dwelling. "Who lives there?" "The Burwells." "Miss Hansford." Thomas tipped his head while clutching his hat, eyes shifting between the two of them, his question clear. "What brings you out on a day like today?" "Not him. Not today." Mercy dipped a curtsy. She felt rather than saw Garrett beside her, shifting, waiting. "Thomas Hopewell, meet Mr. Tyler. He's a friend visiting from the south." Garrett bowed slightly as Thomas did the same. "Shirts for Dr. Morris." "You should hurry. It does not seem likely that the storm will hold off for much longer," Thomas ordered. Mercy stifled her annoyance as she usually did when he attempted to order her life. Of course he assumed, she would spend the rest of her life catering to his whims. She stopped her uncharitable thoughts before they had a chance to carry her away. "You're right. Good day." He tipped his hat. "Good day." After all, he was kind, and what man didn't think he would be the head of his own household? Surely her father had led their family and her mother had been happy. She had always thought that the love they held for each other and God was the ultimate decision-maker where the leading of a family was concerned. Her father had loved her mother like the sunshine in the spring. Mercy wasn't sure if Thomas loved her. He wanted to marry her. Yes, he'd made that very plain in the year since her parents died. But Mercy didn't know if he loved her or her cozy house and land on the bluff above Yorktown. He wasn't a bad man, But she didn't love him, and now she wasn't sure if he'd still have her. And what about Garrett? He made her think of possibilities. So far he treated her with gentleness, patiently standing guard as she healed. The thought brought her comfort. The only emotion Thomas Hopewell triggered was annoyance, if not anger. The wind pushed against Mercy's shoulders and chapped her face as they made their way down Main Street. They could not linger at the cheerful doctor's house today. Mrs. Morris would surely offer them tea, but the storm wouldn't wait. They'd be hard-pressed to make it home before the first downpour. "Come in, child. Get out of that wind." Mrs. Morris flung her door wide to admit them. "And who is this young gentleman?" "He's a friend from down south, Mr. Garrett Tyler." "Welcome to our home, Mr. Tyler." Garrett gave a short bow. "Thank you, ma'am." He handed her the parcel. "Your shirts." "You will stay for tea?" Dr. Morris said he's heard there's a frightful gale blowing east of Norfolk. "Precisely why we cannot stay, Mrs. Morris. I must see Lucy and throw the shutters." "I know you are right, my dear, but do come by soon so we can visit." The warmth of her mother's old friend tripped the thread that held back her tears. Before Mercy could catch the mist, the kind woman caught her in her arms. "What is it?" she crooned, rubbing the firm hand down Mercy's back. Mercy straightened immediately. "Nothing new." Mercy didn't intend to lie. She did miss her parents, just more so since the attack. "They would be so proud of ye." Mercy dabbed a tear that threatened to roll down her cheeks. "Thank you." A branch slapped at the roof. "We really must go." "I will come see ye after the storm." "I shall look forward to that." "I shall have to come on any account, for Dr. Morris didn't leave me the funds to pay ye today." A hearty chuckle rattled her ample bosom as she opened the door for them once more. The wind kicked them off the porch and down the road toward home. Garrett stopped them at the top of a little mound. "The York River is that way, is it not?" He pointed to the southeast. "Yes, the land curves around just there. In future, there will be a Coast Guard training center there." He waved in the general direction. An odoriferous lump squished up on both sides of her shoe. "Ew, no!" She scraped her shoe off in the grass on the side of the road. "We can talk about that later. We really must get home. I need to see to Lucy." "As you wish." He gave her a flourished bow, swinging his tricorn nearly to the ground. Her heart skittered like the leaves across the road. Mercy moved along, the fingers of the wind causing her to stumble a bit. Garrett's hand came to her rescue before she stumbled. She tensed. His hand kept a steady pressure that did not move one jot from where he'd first touched her. "Are you all right?" "I will not live my life in fear," she told the tall trees whose roots she stumbled over. She took a deep breath and let it out. "Yes, I am." He released his hold. "And thank you." He nodded his welcome and remained beside her. Why was it that Garrett's touch sent thrills through her when the mere thought of the man who attacked made her shake with fear? They arrived at the back of the house to find the chickens huddled around the door to their coop. Lucy trotted toward the fence, head bobbing up and down. Large droplets spattered her path to the fence. "Let the chickens in," she commanded. Garrett peeled off immediately. "Easy." Mercy stepped up to her old friend. "Easy." She pulled a carrot from her basket. Lucy ate the treat from Mercy's hand. She stepped into the pen and retrieved a lead rope. Once she'd secured Lucy, she led her to the shed, tossed a forkful of fresh hay into her stall, and took her leave. They'd weathered their share of storms. As long as nothing fell on Lucy, she'd be fine. "Do we need to leave the door open so she can get out?" "No, it's just a little wind and rain. She'll be better off if no debris hits her." Garrett once again nodded his agreement. The shutters. Rain fell as she moved straight for the house, Garrett close behind her. She opened the back door and headed straight in. She'd gotten halfway up the steps when she noticed he'd not follow her inside. Another little knot worked its way loose. "Mr. Tyler?" He looked at her, face open, rain running off the corner of his hat. waiting. She couldn't help but smile. "You may come in, Mr. Tyler." He dumped his hat on the porch and stepped in. "Follow me." He shadowed her into the first of the 2 rooms on the first floor of her house. "You shutter the downstairs, I'll take the upstairs." She'd just entered her bedroom when he hollered, "I'll go to the kitchen." Mercy paused to watch him strut across the yard before she shuddered out the water that began to come down in sheets. A flutter began in her belly that had nothing to do with the fear she'd battled since the attack. The shutters banged into place on the bottom floor of the kitchen. Mercy quickly drew the shutters closed and made her way to the kitchen. She'd need to bring food over for the evening and possibly the morning. Wind shot rain at the house in pelts. Nearly noon, they'd been shut up in her house for about an hour. Garrett fingered the phone resting in his pocket. When the power was out at home, which was frequent during hurricane season, he was set. He'd read a paperback book or a book on his phone. He could still do that with the app on his phone if it weren't for Mercy sitting across the hearth from him, peering at the tiny stitches she made in whatever it was she was sewing. She'd been cool about him so far, not questioning much that he basically traveled through time to be here. He assumed she must be in some kind of shock from the rape. She certainly didn't appear to be mentally present all the time. She'd get an absent look in her eye and then shudder back to the present. She'd taken him in without question, but worried about the propriety of all her other actions. If the period romance movies Olivia had subjected him to were correct, he shouldn't be here closed up in a house with her alone, but she'd said nothing. True, she'd put him up in the kitchen and not let him into the house before the storm hit. Eventually she'd come out of it, and he wasn't going to risk shocking her any more than was necessary for his survival. He wasn't sure how her behavior had been affected by the trauma. Would the sight of an electronic device interest her, or send her to the local magistrate to condemn him for a witch? Until he knew, he'd tiptoe. "I think we can open these shutters for a little light." Garrett unlatched the window. The shutter slapped out of his hand and bounced against the exterior wall. The rain soaked his shirt sleeve through. "Maybe not." "I can see well enough. Soon I will get a candle." "What do you normally do when the power's out?" "Power is out?" "Yeah, it's a long story." "I believe we will be here a while." "You won't believe it." "You said that before." "Have you heard of electricity?" "I have heard that Dr. Franklin has created an electricity machine. I am aware that top scientists—" "That's right! I'd forgotten about Ben Franklin and his lightning rod." She sent him a questioning look. "Ben Franklin laid the framework for so much that we still use today." She smiled. It took him a minute to realize the slip. "Well, anyway, Franklin wanted to harness electricity into batteries so it could be used later." She rested the sewing on her lap. "In the future, it has been harnessed. We have great machines that can create electricity and pipe it into houses. We call it power. We use it to keep our food cold and the lights on." "How can electricity keep a candle on?" His finger itched for a computer. With it, he could show her a picture of what he meant. His phone lay in his pocket. Surely a light bulb gif resided in his photos or among his memes. Caution caught his hand as he reached. Not yet. "Well, it can't. Electricity inspired all kinds of new inventions like the light bulb. Do you have paper and a pen?" Once supplied with a shred of foolscap and a candle, Garrett drew a small picture of a light bulb and how it worked. He explained electric motors and how they powered sewing machines. The storm blew, and Garrett ignored the telltale sounds of destruction. A loud crack shook them back to the present. It sounded like the front. Mercy reached the door first. Garrett stood behind her close enough to smell her bayberry soap. Sheeting rain curtained the landscape. He could just make out a large uprooted tree lying across the road. How would he move it without a chainsaw? "It will keep." Mercy closed and locked the door. "I shall prepare our supper." They sat before the cold hearth with bread and ham. A pot of stew sat next to the hearth, awaiting a fire. They hadn't started one, for Mercy said the wind would send the smoke down into the house. Like pretty much everything else in this world, he had to assume she knew better than he, and kept his mouth closed and acquiesced. In truth, it was beginning to chafe. Tell me about your family. Will they miss you terribly now that you're in the past? Guilt curled into his belly. I doubt they know.